Hey everyone, it's Jazzy. Welcome to my channel. I recently did an Instagram live where I interviewed a midwife, and I did this in honor of Black Maternal Health Week. The theme for this year is Our Bodies Belong to Us, Restoring Black Joy and Autonomy. And in this conversation, we discuss the choices that are available to you as a birthing person and the option of a birth center, because with my first pregnancy, I had no idea a birth center even existed or there was such thing as midwives. So I wanted to make sure that I put this information out here. Talk soon.
Everything you need. Hi!
I'm so sorry.
No, it's totally fine. Listen, babies are on their own schedule. Everybody is totally understanding of it. We appreciate you for coming. Ladies and gents, have with us today Mrs. Micha Hurley. Well, I call her Micha. She is a licensed midwife in Arizona. She's a wife and mother to 5 children. She works at the birth nest at Catlin Court. She owns a business, At Your Birth Midwifery Services. It's midwifery, correct? Not midwifery?
Yeah. It sounds weird, but yeah, it is.
Midwifery Services. She caters to families as a midwife, a doula, a childbirth educator, and a placenta crafter. But she's not doing all of that.
Crazy
She's
world.
busy. She's busy with cheerleading, basketball, football, and other activities. Excuse me. You're also the first Black mother that I ever met that homeschooled. You encouraged me to homeschool.
Yes. Yeah. We actually this year we are not homeschooling.
Oh.
I know. So it's been a different ride for us this year. But I don't know, we go back and forth. But that's another story. That's a whole other conversation.
We can do a separate live just about homeschooling, because
we definitely have to talk like the pros and cons, and like we go back and forth all the time. My husband's, I swear it's like once a week he's like, just pull them.
So I said this on the first live, but for anybody who missed it, Micha caught baby 2 and baby 3. Those were the only home births that I did, and she was there. And it's very special because, correct me if I'm wrong, I was one of your first home births.
Yeah, like, well, you were my first birth starting with the birth nest. Like, that was my first birth start. I think I had just signed my contracts with them as a student. You were my first birth as a student.
There we go. There we go. And you caught the baby too. Like, you were right there, I want to say.
I don't know, because I think Jamie caught, or she was supposed to catch, and I just helped. I don't know, but I remember that birth.
I know Pam didn't really catch the baby because with baby number 2, the umbilical cord was wrapped, and Pam was like on the side, like, tell her to stand up. So
yeah,
and baby number 3
were in there.
And I was your last birth as a student.
You're my first and my last. So special.
So, very special. When we walked into the birth nest and we saw you in India, my husband and I looked at each other and were like, this is it. This is the place. We want to be here, because we just felt like this is where we needed to be. We really wanted our second experience to almost guarantee that we were going to have Black women in the room. Yeah. And for me, I definitely wanted a Black woman in the room. Even though I had no issues with safety my first pregnancy, it was just important for me to make sure that happened. So I was really excited when they were like, yeah, can everybody come? Bring the whole crew. Bring them. As long as Mike is there.
But I loved it. I loved both your births. They were just so perfect in every way to me.
And completely different.
Yeah, and very different. Very different. But yeah, I don't know if you know, but like I was a client of the birth nest too. Like that's how I met them. And so I know that feeling. I know that feeling that you had, like walking in there, like, okay, I feel safe here. It feels like a home. So yeah.
Yes, it does feel like it. And Pam and Sabrina they're amazing. And I love that you said that's what brought you into midwifery. Okay, so I see here that you were in the medical field for over 14 years.
Isn't that crazy? Yeah. First I went to school for nursing originally, and then I had my daughter, so I had stopped going to school, but then went back again for medical assisting and got my degree in just science, and just became a medical assistant. Actually, back up. Sorry, I got a phlebotomy license first. I went and got my phlebotomy license. I quit nursing school, went and got my phlebotomy license, then went back to school to be a medical assistant, and did that for a while. I mean, till probably 2019.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I think till from 2007, 8, 2007 or 8. I got my license of phlebotomy, and so up until 2019, I stayed working either as a phlebotomist or as a medical assistant or both. Working at, let's see, I worked in family practice. I worked in internal medicine, pediatrics. I worked at the trauma unit at Osborne. I love that. Yeah, I've I feel like I've been all over. And then I went back to nursing school thinking like that's really what I wanted. Got to my clinicals and kind of realized like I don't really want to be in the hospital. I think I like the fast pace of like it's never the same thing, because I think working as a medical assistant in the practices, I loved it because I got to know the patients, I got to know the people, but it was always the same thing.
Yeah.
And so I thought the hospital was where I wanted to be because it was so different. It was always going to be different people. Realized that's still not, it's not as personable. I witnessed a couple births like in the hospital and I was like, ew, like,
Okay.
why are you doing that? That's not nice. And I remember talking to a labor and delivery nurse, and like when I asked like why can't we like do, she just said like I don't have time to be that for that person. Like, yeah, that mom could probably do better or needs this and needs that. I cannot do that for all of them. And I'm like, ugh. So that's when I realized I did want to do out of hospital. I tried to finish nursing school, but had more kids. And then I became a doula, and I worked with Pam for a little bit. And then she said, have you thought about being a student? And I was like, I don't know how that works. Like, I thought I had to finish nursing school. And then she kind of directed me towards the path that I took with NARM, the PEP route. And once I researched that, I'm like, oh, this is perfect. It's just, apprenticeship, and loved it. Loved every second of it. Hard
And you're
work.
still, I couldn't do it. Okay, so I want to backtrack just a little bit. I want to
Yeah.
backtrack to, you said you did a few hospital trials in labor and delivery, or clinicals, I
Mm-hmm.
should say. And you noticed that there was a treatment, like a difference in treatment, and how
Yeah.
you wanted to care for the patient versus what the hospital could give you. Could you dive just a little bit more into why the hospital can't give you all the care that you need as
Yeah.
a birther, and maybe some things that you feel the hospital could do, even
Oh,
with
that's
their
yeah.
hecticness? Mm-hmm.
It just sucks because I feel like even as becoming a doula and like working with people in the hospital, I have to remind them that I feel like a lot of nurses aren't necessarily doing these things because they really believe this is how it should be done, or that they're even trying to be mean. It's literally their job. As far as the making sure lawsuits don't happen, or making sure everybody, if we do this for every single person, no one can say they were singled out. And just following policy and procedures. And obviously those policies and procedures are put in place, yeah, for money, but like if we take away the money, it's to make sure they have a business that's not going to be sued, to have a business that's going to still be there in a couple of years. I mean, it all boils down to money. But I mean, there's a lot of things that the hospital or that does, but it's really just to ensure that no one's going to sue, that they're following protocols for every person, and those protocols don't apply to everybody. But also being able to connect, because I think a lot of times with hospitals, connecting with somebody will make it seem like you didn't pay attention to the next person. Like they all have to be treated equally. And I think that's a big thing that I like to have outside of the care that I give, whether it's the birth nest or my own clients, that I connect with that person, that I get to know them, because that's, I feel like I keep saying, I feel like, but that's another big thing that the hospital misses on, is that our cultures are different. And so the way you speak to one person, you can't speak to the next person like that, or
Mm-hmm.
you're just different cultures in general, just different foods. And I think I just had this conversation with a client that my job is to connect with you and figure out how I can provide the best care for you as an individual. Because I can say you should eat, like, greens are going to be great. Any type of green leafy food is going to be great in pregnancy. I can tell you, go eat collard greens. But if you are a Caucasian family or Hispanic family, that's not in your culture to eat. And so me telling you that is just like, it's a disconnect. And that's a lot what the hospital misses, is that not each person can be treated the same. Not each person has to have an IV. Not each person believed in this blood work for their lineage or their, family. And so just because they didn't do it doesn't mean they need to be treated different or be forced to do it, or it's just connection. The hospital misses connection.
I agree. I did talk about that when I was on earlier as well, how when I went to the birth center, I felt everybody cared about me. Whereas when I went into the hospital, I did get the doctor I wanted, thankfully. That doesn't always happen. However, the nurses, I just felt like I was just a number. There was one nurse that I could tell she was interested in what was going to happen with my labor. She was fascinated by the fact that my water broke and I still wasn't like progressing. She's like, I cannot believe that it's been 18 hours. If I get back and you haven't had your baby, I need to be here. And I was there. But connection, it was huge. I didn't feel it. I felt definitely like a number. Now, going into the hospital, this is Black Maternal Health Week.
Mm-hmm.
Did you personally see a difference in the treatment of Black women, or Black birthers, I should say, when they enter the hospital setting versus other races?
What races? I think so. I mean, and I think that I can say this. I think that I can be able to understand both sides because I am biracial. My dad is white and my mom is Black. And it's interesting because one thing, my first birth was in a hospital and it was a great experience ultimately. But what's interesting about it is anytime that right now I have locks and, like, I look ethnic today.
They look great.
Thank you. Thank you, girl. But for the most part, I think I get Hispanic, or the reason why I bring it up is because I've never had a bad experience in a hospital. And I've heard, like, my friends, my sister, or even people that I've represented in the hospital as a provider, as a care provider, as a doula or anything, I can see it. But the reason why I bring it up is because every time that, like, I get, when you're in the hospital and you have a baby, it's marked on there, white baby girl or whatever. My thing is always, or when you get your records, it's marked what your ethnicity is. Every time I've looked at my records, it always has said white. So I do have to believe that plays a part in some of the care that I have had. There has been a lot of Black moms that transfer to us, whether the birth center or moms that I have, like, in my personal business, and I get their records, and the things that they're said in there are just mind-blowing, or the experiences that they have and they come with, and then I see it documented in notes. And I think that's just, wild and crazy in general, but I've never seen that with my white clients, and it's different. And that is another thing, is that you will see a lot of birth professionals know that is there, because we've even got had clients transfer to us, or that we have to transfer out of care, and the first thing we said to them is, you are going to be treated different, whether it's different ethnicity or, it sounds bad, I know, and I don't know the study on age-wise, but if you're young and you're Black, you are not going to do, it's very rare you're going to do well in the hospital. They're going to run over you.
I thank you for bringing that up. Okay. I had my first baby right at 25, because at 26 you get the cutoff for the insurance. So I had my first baby at 25. I received a postpartum survey of sorts where I had to document.
Postpartum is not good. I'm sorry, I had to say that. Go ahead.
I had to mark on there how I felt during my pregnancy. And I know I told you guys this because you guys were very concerned throughout my second pregnancy, first with you guys, about my mental health during pregnancy and after. You guys constantly checked on me because after I did that survey, I was classified. I'm not saying it's wrong. It was correct because I was depressed during my first pregnancy. I was unaware that that was something that could happen during pregnancy. I thought it was just a me thing, so I didn't tell anybody. I just went through it and, chugged along. I can honestly say and I told this to so many people, once I had my baby, once my baby was on my chest, I felt the sadness go away. Literally felt it lifted. But I took the survey. I answered honestly about the feelings that I had during pregnancy. And I was met with nurses and a doctor whom I hadn't seen. This wasn't a doctor I had actually gone to. And then, oh no, actually I didn't even meet with them first. They sent a nurse in who told me I didn't perform well on the survey. And because of that, they sent a social worker to my room. And one of the questions the social worker asked was, do I have a job and do I have insurance and am I married? Meanwhile, my husband, he was standing literally right next to me like, yes, oh, you're married? Yes, we're married. Oh, you have insurance? Well, what kind of work do you do? And I had
the questions that they ask, and I can sit right next to a white woman with the same things, and it's night and day. It's night and day.
Never met a person who's actually taken the same postpartum survey as me. And I was like, wait, so that's just a me thing? They only sent a social worker to my room to ask me if I had a job and if I had insurance, and then said something like, I see love in the room. I see love in the room, so you can go home.
Yeah, good job. Thank you. Thank you.
And then the doctor and the nurses all filed in. It was like a line of 4 people later on.
This is helping.
And they said, if we'll check on you later on at the 6th week, and if we need to, we'll go ahead and we'll put you on medication. If you feel like that, obviously give us a call beforehand.
Y'all could be dead by then. It's mine, yeah. Which brings me.
And I just remember thinking, like, a social worker seems intense. I didn't understand what that meant. I honestly thought that they were gonna take my kid. Right. So I was like, well, what's the right answer? Like, I'm sweating, obviously, because hormones, but also because I'm nervous. I'm like, what do I say? What do I do? Like, don't take my baby, please. I'm crying. And I just felt like they could have handled that so much better.
It's interesting because, I don't know. What's interesting about it to me is that you give this survey, but who's following up? And that's the point of the midwifery care. And like I said, that connection that you have, because there's no way we are going to ask these questions and then say, see you in 6 weeks. Like, what? Huh? Who's gonna help her? Like, that doesn't make sense. And then to send a social worker, and that's why most women don't even talk about postpartum, because everybody's worried about their baby being taken. I just have a client, and she's had other kids before, and she was telling me how last time she had these thoughts and she had the same thing that you're talking about, but felt like if she said anything to anybody, even like inkling, that they would come and take the baby away. And it's like, let's just talk about it. Let's figure it out. And it's just crazy. It's crazy to me that they're just thinking, we'll just see you in 6 weeks. Like, let's figure out, let's talk about some vitamin D. Let's talk about who's there to support you, how they can support you. When's the next time we're going to check on you? If you start feeling these things, these are the people you can call. Yeah, we're going to go down a rabbit hole, but just like, it's mind-blowing to think, like, take this test, we're going to bring all these people in to scare you into, like, something could happen, but then we'll check on you in 6 weeks. Like, do something. Let's do something.
I'm telling you. And that kind of nail in the coffin for me. I didn't know what I was going to do different next time, but I was like, I don't want to feel this.
Right.
I don't want this. I didn't even know birth centers were a thing. Again, I had a coworker say, oh, my daughter births at a birth center. I was like, oh, it's not. Google. Oh, Oh, okay. Well, I wanted to do a natural birth.
Right.
I didn't successfully do it my first time, but I think I could manage it. And again, I walked into the birth nest and I was like, yeah, this feels like home. Like we left
Yeah.
and on the car ride home, we were like, it just gives you this home vibe. I feel accepted. I feel wanted.
Yeah.
Um, every appointment, even the first 20 minutes, I feel like you guys didn't even really talk about pregnancy. It was like, how do you feel?
Yeah.
Have you been able to exercise? Are you tired? Are you getting rest?
Yeah.
Are you
Because
talking
we
to your
really believe that,
partner?
like, if we focus on the mom and midwifery care, as if I focus on you, then you're going to build a healthy baby. What are you eating? What does your day look like? Who's supporting you? Those are the important things, because without those things, you're just going to end up with different. I mean, you're not taking care of yourself and you're not taking care of baby.
No, no.
And that's the thing right there. That's the big thing about midwifery is like our care is the woman's care. We're going to focus on you as the woman, whereas the doctor is like, I'm focused on that thing in your belly.
And even then, only for a little bit. Golly. Once it gets out, they out of town. Like,
It's crazy.
so we have your clinicals in hospital,
Oh,
and you're
yeah,
in the
yeah, yeah.
hospital. You see all these different things. You've been through labor and delivery. You've been in internal medicine, pediatrics, and you get to the clinicals. You're like, okay, this isn't the setting for me,
Yeah.
and you make a shift to doula work. Now, how did those things connect? Was it because you had done some shifts in the labor and delivery, and you were like, I would like to work with birthing mothers, or was it something else?
I think I didn't know how I was going to become a midwife, and I knew I wanted to support women and couldn't, and I just looked it up and was like, oh, I could do this. It really was me trying to figure out how I can support women then, how can I do these things? And I never had a doula.
That's okay. That's
I would tell everybody that they should have a doula, especially your first kid. If you had your first kid in the hospital and now you're doing a home birth or birth center, you should definitely have a doula. You should have a doula in your corner at all times to support you, because you don't know what's going to happen with that birth. And we can prepare everything. And if you have to transfer, it's nice to have somebody there to be in your corner. But anyways, I didn't have one, and that's pretty much it. I knew I wanted to support women, and I didn't know how I was going to become a midwife, taking care of kids, and I kept having kids. And I saw this as my way of like, I can do something this way.
kept having kids. She's got 5 kids, y'all. Micah has 5 children. And you look damn good too. So
Yeah.
you get to doula work, and you're in doula, and you get pregnant and go to birth nest, and that's how you connect with Pam
No,
and make the
I
switch.
went to Pam first, and
Okay.
then I became a doula after that. And
Oh,
Pam saw that I was becoming a doula. I posted I was being a doula. I think I even told the birth nest, like, hey, I'm a doula now, so if anybody needs a doula, I will do discounted things. Oh, thank you. I will do, discounted births, especially for women of color. I'm always willing to do whatever needs to be done. If you know someone who needs childbirth classes or needs a doula, please let me know, and I will do what I can with the budget that they have. And so one day one day she called me and she said, hey, I have a mom who needs a doula. And I was like, okay. And she's like, but she's in labor right now. And I was
oh
like,
my.
oh. She's like, can you come right now? And I was like, let me find out. So I told my husband, and he's like, just go. Just go. I was like, all right. And went, and the birth went great. I ended up helping out with a little bit like more medical stuff. And so after the birth, she sent me a text and said, can we have lunch? And I said, sure, let's have lunch. And so little did I know that it would be, do you remember Galen, the MD that we have there? And it would be Sabrina and Pam, all of them. I was just like, okay. And she's like, so we want to talk to you about becoming a student. Instead of a doula, could you be our student? And I was like, what does that entail? Tell me more. Like,
What particulars here?
how does this work? And when they told me, I knew that it was going to be a lot for my family, but I went home to my husband, and he's like, this is what you've been wanting. And so let's just do it. Let's just go for it. Tell them yes, and we'll figure it out. And I was like, okay. And I had a full-time job, and by then we had 5 kids, and our youngest, I was still nursing. I think he was 5 or 6 months. I was still nursing him, and I was like, we'll just see what happens then. And so then, yes, that was when you had your first birth. I think that weekend you had your first birth. And
I was
so,
late
yeah.
too. Oh my gosh.
But
Oh
yeah.
my gosh. I literally everything that's like supposed to happen, and my body was like, "Oh, you thought? No. Oh, you thought you were gonna be early, 2 days late." You're welcome. Oh, you thought this was gonna be fast for your last one? No. Try pushing for 2 hours. Oh my
It was
gosh, craziness.
awesome, though. It was beautiful. It was awesome.
It's great. Well, shout out to your husband. He's extremely supportive, and we
Yeah,
love a supportive hubby
we do.
partner.
We do.
Now, if you could detail out for us, what was the path to, because this is an apprenticeship of sorts, the path you took to midwifery. So can you tell us what all you need, maybe credits wise? I'm sure you have to
Yeah.
take different classes and certifications or
So the
hours.
interesting thing with, like, you would think that, but the preceptorship that I did, it's called a PEP route, PEP route, PEP PEP route, through NARM, and they actually don't require, they require a high school diploma, and then
Oh,
you find a preceptor, and then it's split up into like 4 phases, and like the first phase is more like you're watching. You can do them as a doula, or you can just be someone in the room that's watching the births. And then the second phase is actually being an assistant. Next phase is actually you are the midwife working under a midwife.
okay.
And then the last one is, you're the birth secretary. You still have to work it under somebody, but you are responsible for their care. Um, and so that's the hard part, because not every birth is going to be something that you need to sign off for. And some births are going to go not the way they should, and so you don't get signed off for those.
Mm,
You have to have a certain number of hospital births and a certain number of people that you stick with the whole pregnancy.
got you.
And so it's very, like, it sounds like it's easy in the sense of, like, you don't have real classes, but you do have to study on your own, and you have to know these topics and be able to, I mean, you have 2 lives in your hands, and you literally have to make sure that you are paying attention, that most births are going to go just fine. The percentages say that 80% of hospital births could have been home births without any problems. And so, for the most part, you're not going to be worrying about saving lives. Um, but if that goes to come, you need to be able to know those signs and symptoms. So, anyways, broken down to a lot of different things. I think it was very helpful, and I was able to get through it a little bit easier because I did have that medical background. I already knew
Yep.
the blood pressure. I already knew the signs of clot. I already knew how to control hemorrhaging. So having those things uh, really did help in caring for moms.
So it doesn't sound easy. I know you said it might sound like it. No, it doesn't. Because even when you said you have to have ones that don't go to the hospital, I'm thinking, oh, but some people get transferred to the hospital, or some people think they're going to go to the
Yeah.
hospital, but they don't make it on time. So I could just see how life be life and could
And that's what I'm saying, like,
interfere.
so phase one, I think, is like either 5 or 10 births. You would think I would remember right now, but I can't. Phase two, I think it's like 25 or maybe 50. And same thing for phase three. And then phase four, I think it's 5. But
Okay.
it's good to keep in mind that all of those are going to get signed off for. And in that, I still have to do prenatal visits. You have to do certain things in those prenatal visits for each of those phases and newborn exams. I am responsible for making sure I get a full amount of that. And so um, I have to get, what, 25 births in this phase? I could have done 60 births in order to get that 25. Yeah.
Because you got to meet specific requirements. And then you probably can't even just say, oh, well, this meets the requirements for phase two, so I'll just sign it
No, no,
now.
no. You're one phase at a time. Yeah, yeah.
What I do, I'm like, and then, so what I really appreciated about midwifery as well was the postpartum care. Because typically when I went to the hospital, I shouldn't say typically, the hospital, I birthed the baby, they kept me there for 48 hours. That's a whole another story.
Yeah, right,
They kept
right.
me there for a while. But then I didn't see that doctor again for 6 weeks. Whereas with you guys, I see you guys 24 hours, 72 hours. Is it 1 week or 2 week?
The 2 weeks.
2 week, and then
Between 1 and 2 weeks, it just depends on how it falls. But yeah.
I mean that's already 3 extra visits
Oh yeah, like
before I hit
during the
visit.
postpartum period, for sure in the postpartum period, you're gonna get 4 visits without a doubt, and that's gonna be the 24 to 36 hours, the 3 to 4 day, and then usually that's what I'm saying. It's a week from that 3 4 day. So you might be you're usually like a week and 4 days or something like that.
Yeah.
And then we try to see you at 5 weeks, and then technically we're done at 6 weeks. But in the meantime, if you needed more visits, like if you were struggling or if you were giving us signs, we could have you come in every week or
Yeah.
coming to see you. And I think that's really important to realize too for home birth and birth center birth. We do come to you guys those first 2 visits. We don't expect you getting out of the bed. We don't expect you carrying that baby all over the place or doing anything.
Even though you have to take the baby for the like weekly check, it's
Yeah.
intense.
So, some people don't.
Listen, I remember Reggie dropped me off in front of the pediatric office, and I walked to the elevator to the front door, and I was already tired.
That's another big point in the postpartum period. The hospital, I feel like, tells you, the mom, the expectations and what you should do, and that. Whereas our care is, no, we want you taking care of baby. So where's your postpartum care team at? Is it your mom taking care of you? Is it your husband taking care of you? Let's sit down and talk about, like, hey, just so you know, we don't expect her to get her own water. Like, we don't expect her to do any of these. So here's what we're looking for. And we give everybody a piece of paper so they know, like, we're looking for these things, we're looking for those things, and we make sure it's known we don't want you out that door.
And listen, I didn't listen the first time with you guys, and I paid the price. I'm pretty confident I probably messed up some stitches. I had extra, like my bleeding was starting to slow down, and I was like, oh, I'm good.
Right.
Doing laundry. It's like day 4, and then the next day I was like, dead to the bed, girl. Just, I could not get up. I was like, oh my gosh, I think I overdid it. I mean, like, you think? You think you overdid it?
Because first time mom or first home birth moms that come from the hospital. So when you come from the hospital, like you're happy to be home. You feel good. So then like you're stuck at hyper or you're taking birth breaks at home. We usually tell you you're on a high. You're still thrilled that you did this. So when you feel good, please sit your tail down.
Well, even because I didn't have the epidural, obviously. We can't do an epidural at home. We'll get into all the things we can and can't versus the hospital. But you can walk right away. That makes you feel like, oh, I'm healed. There you go. I'm fine. I can walk from here to there. So like I must be okay. Whereas I got the epidural last time, I couldn't move.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's get into the differences. Okay. I know I'm sure once the pandemic hit, there was a lot of people who decided to birth at the birth center and were unaware the things they could not have. So why don't you tell us what?
I think they do realize that they could not have. I think that they didn't realize how intense it was going to be. That's where I think we lost people at. But it's okay. Still differences. Still a lot of differences. And I think what's really important to realize before I say this is that the way you choose the birth is ultimately important. Just because we're saying home birth and birth center and all that good stuff, ultimately, I have a shirt that even says it. It could be home, it could be hospital, it could be the moon. Wherever you want to be, have birth, just make sure you're supported and educated. So whatever you choose is what you choose. If you want the epidural, girl, go get that epidural. but you should also look up some stuff before you go into just doing it. But anyways, some of the things I think um big differences would be when you get into a hospital, you have the intake, and they're gonna do like an IV, and they're gonna do their basic prep procedures and have you sign in paperwork. Whereas the birth center, we are not gonna do an IV, hopefully. And we are gonna like we already know what your birth plan is because we've talked about it in all the prenatal visits. Um, and so we're already honoring what you're looking for. We're having conversations and just getting you comfortable. I think that's a big deal to realize that we're not worried about what our policies and procedures are. It's about getting you comfortable. We've already talked about policies and procedures. We've already talked about um, what we do and what you want. We've already talked about all the educational things that you are choosing. And so I think that's a big deal that you already have that team that you built. Whereas coming into the hospital with strangers and having to reiterate the things that you did or you didn't want or not even understanding what's happening versus this place you've been coming this whole time in pregnancy, team that you've already know and we already know what you're looking for. I feel like I got off subject. But anyways, I had to say
No, I'm glad you said that because I also wanted to circle back and talk about that because I felt that with when I went to you guys, there was always, it wasn't, how do I say this? Okay. It wasn't, okay, this is what we're doing and we're going to schedule it for this day. It was, okay, have you heard of the vitamin K shot? Oh, okay, well, here's these different articles that we have in the portal that you can read. After you read them, then I want you to let me know if you're going to be doing the vitamin D shot. Okay, for the, oh, what's the drink? What's the drink called?
glucose testing.
Drink, or we could do the blood testing. Why don't you go ahead and look that up and let us know what you want to do? And a lot of your testing and things that I just thought were standard, even with blood work, that you guys were like, okay, so here's the blood work requirements for the state, and here's all the thing blood work that you typically do when you go to the hospital. Which one do you want?
Yeah.
And I was like, girl, I don't know. It was very weird for me because I was like, aren't you just tell me what I get and then I get it. I didn't even know I had an option, and I don't know if that's on purpose. I don't know, but it didn't feel necessarily when I went the original route that it wasn't choices available. I thought, oh, this is what we do. This is a standard procedure. Everything felt like a requirement, a state requirement at that. Whereas when I got to you guys, it's like, wait, I don't have to do that.
What do you mean?
Oh, I didn't even know there was other options. Like,
People get so shocked when I say like, so what do you want to do? And they're like, wait, I can define it? Yeah, you can. Like, what do you, this is your baby, this is your family, what do you want? And some people are like you, like, I don't know, I've always done it. Like, what do you suggest? And it's like, okay, go leave this and you come tell me what you want. And then let's talk about it some more. But yeah, I think that's the bigger thing. Those are the two big things when it comes to birthing in a hospital and birthing at the birth center is one, all the choices. I think people fail to realize that a lot of things with the hospital, they're choices. You're not required to get an IV. You are not required to stay in that bed. Like, those are choices. And then the other thing is that your team. You've been working at the birth center or home birth, especially with us. You've been working with us the whole time. We know, we've talked, we know that you're educated. We know we've given all the things. We don't have to rely on, did someone tell her this or tell her that? We've all had these conversations. And then once you go into labor, your team is your team. That team isn't switching out and have to catch up the next person. Your team is staying with you and sticking with you through the postpartum period so we know what's going on and not having to check back on notes and was this documented and the last nurse said this and this nurse is saying that. Like, it's continuous care. Everything.
I think I got 3 or 4 nurses throughout my time there, just in the labor and delivery. I got stuck in labor and delivery for a little bit after birth too, so I like saw everybody. I was at everyone's.
But then, okay, what's the big difference? Big difference for obviously I can't speak for other states. I know the state of Arizona doesn't allow you to birth in water in the hospital. You can labor in the water, but you got to get out to have that baby. And obviously with us, the birth center or home birth, you can have your baby in the water and we encourage it. It makes it gentler on you and baby, uh, and whatever you want, ultimately.
And what state requirements do you and regulations do you guys have to meet at the birth center? I know a lot of people might think when they think of it, they might, oh, they're all willy-nilly, they can do what they want. But you guys actually have a
No,
lot of
we
restrictions.
actually have more restrictions than doctors do. Like, there's a lot of rules and regulations that we have to adhere to that doctors don't. And there's plenty of times where, like, my rules and regulations might, okay, for instance, a blood pressure. For the state of Arizona, if your blood pressure is 140 over 90 in labor, I have to transfer you in. With that being said, I have to transfer care. I can no longer do your birth. With that being said, if you are in labor, it could be that labor's going fast. It could be I need to get you into the water to try to relax you. Let me get you some water or some hydration, different things. But the funny thing is, I've had people in labor, and I had two people where I had to transfer because their blood pressure was high. Um, and when I transferred them, the hospital did nothing. They actually were like, "Why didn't you just do X, Y, Z? Why didn't you like?" She got here and had the baby. Oh my gosh! And you transferred for 140 over 90. I'm like, that's what my rules say. They're like, you could have just did this. I'm like, and risk my life.
No,
Well,
can't do
like,
that.
I transfer them, but the hospital doesn't change or do anything different than I would have did. But because my rules and regulations say this, I have to. A couple of things. There's a lot of things that we are like really, they crack down on us. I think another thing that I think is honestly, in my opinion, is crazy, but it is what it is. Every time I catch a baby, every time someone has a baby in my care, I have to uh, document, besides the birth certificate, document with the state about that birth, how'd that birth go, were there any complications, did she have to, blah, 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 blah. But the doctors don't do that. They don't have to
You're,
review their stuff with the state.
so it's an essay. You have to turn in an essay for every baby that you touch.
Yeah. But that's the thing, like, we have less, when you look at the statistics, when you look at the numbers, we have less, hemorrhages. We have less babies in distress once they're born. There's a lot of things that we are less on, but we're looked at harder. And I just feel like if that person or those physicians are having more of it. I'm not saying that everybody's that way. I'm not saying that because I've met some amazing doctors. I love working with certain OBGYNs, and there's some great ones in the valley. I'm just saying that we are looked at harder and more stricter than normal hospital physicians here.
Okay, safety. People are thinking it's not safe. What would you say to somebody, especially it's Black Maternal Health Week. You have a Black mother approach you, and she wants to know, should I transfer my care to a birth center? And her main thing that's keeping her from doing it is her partner is worried about the safety.
Yeah, it sucks. Normally I tell people, look at the business of being born. That's one of my big go-tos. Like, just look at that, and it'll kind of open your eyes to a bunch of different things. And then look at the statistics. Look at those numbers of, what's the chances of you having a hemorrhage in a hospital versus a hemorrhage at home or the birth center. Look up the statistics of why babies are in distress or why you're more likely to have, certain bleeding. And really have a conversation because in education, because I can understand why people get scared. I can understand why people get worried. Things do happen, and that's a big part. Is I can't tell you these things won't happen to you. As your provider, I can't say that you're not going to have to transfer. I cannot say your baby won't have these things. I can tell you what the chances are. Um, it's a big thing on education. I always feel bad for the moms whose partners don't want to do it because you do have to be on the same page. Ultimately, yeah, this is your baby and this is your body and your birth, and I think that you should be making the ultimate choice. And like we said, hooray for partners who are supportive and trust you to make a good decision. But it is one that, like, you both have to be on the same page or it's just going to cause anxiety during the labor and birth.
Yeah, and nobody is going to be helpful if they're anxious.
Yeah. And so really it's about education. I always recommend The Business of Being Born, and looking up those statistics of the chances of like a hospital versus a birth center. Because most of those things are iatrogenic, care problems, like things that are caused by the doctor doing things. Or not necessarily the doctor, just the hospital. Medications are things that can cause a rippling effect.
You laid out that your regulations are almost stricter, so they should feel just as safe.
Yeah.
And okay, I have a friend who wanted me to ask, what are some ways that we can split the breech baby and glucose drink versus glucose testing at home? I'm assuming they meant blood testing. What's the difference? Which one's better?
Oh, okay, never mind. I get what you're saying. Okay, first of all, for breech, go to spinning babies. That yeah, spinning babies has a lot of different things, but also look at the breech correlation, because I think there's a misconception that a baby can't be born breech, and they can. You definitely have to find a provider. Probably look into a midwife. Sorry, because the downside with a lot of hospitals and doctors is the schools are no longer teaching the doctors, so they're not trained, so they're not doing it. But the breech correlation, or what's the word I'm looking for? Come on, Danielle. I see you. Besides that, what's it called? Breach. Breach Beyond Borders. Look them up. You can see the different things. But like Danielle saying below, it would be chiropractor care would be awesome. Sometimes we hold tension in our hips or in our back that doesn't allow baby to turn, and that alignment can really help baby adjust. I would want to know how far along you are, though, as well. So if you're listening, answer that.
We're definitely past 20 weeks.
Okay, they still have time. Most babies are going to turn, but I would say go to a chiropractor as soon as possible. The glucose testing, I don't know. I have mixed things about it. As a provider, I'm kind of just like, the thing with glucose is that, it kind of runs in the family in certain ways, but really, gestational diabetes is really a malfunction of the placenta and how it transfers insulin from you to baby, or all to you, or all to baby, or whatever. And so it is something that you want to know. Yeah, you should have signs and symptoms, but it is something that you kind of want to know. And so the glucose testing, I'm assuming she's talking about at home, is the finger pricks. And that testing three times, it's actually 6 times a day. It's 3 times a day, but it's like before you eat and then testing after you eat. And so, it's really going to come down to the comfort level.
I just want to say I was totally fine with the glucose drink. I know a lot of women complain about it. I don't think it tastes that bad. I drank it just fine.
No, that's disgusting.
I drank it just fine. I requested it for my second baby. You guys told me I was one of like 3 people ever.
Not many people do. Okay, but hold on. I'm gonna go back to that. But also the glucose. Okay, yeah. Then there's the other screening with the glucose drink, which to me is not a good test, because there's chemicals in it. I don't know the ingredients revived by Ruth. But that's fine. We don't know all the ingredients in it. I'm sure she does. I bet she does, because she does research like crazy. But and then the sugar content of it is not realistic. So what we like to do is you come in fasting, nothing to eat or drink, draw your blood then, and then go eat normal breakfast that you normally would do. Like whether it's pancakes, eggs, bacon, something that has sugar and protein, something that you would normally eat. And that way we can see what your body's really doing with the sugar versus this drink that you don't always drink. That's just how I feel about it. And I think that it's all going to come down to preference. The glucose drink does have like a lot of fake positives. And so what's really important to know is that do your research on it, figure out what you want to do. And then don't be afraid to tell your doctor or your provider, I want it done this way. Like, I know they say, I don't do it that way, or that's not how we do it. There doesn't make sense of why they can't do it this way now. Like, hey, I would like my glucose tested like this. And if they're not on board, you should probably find someone anyways, because y'all not on the same page. Even if they are the best doctor, if they're not on board, if you're not on the same page, you're not going to really trust them when you're in labor.
There you go. You got to go with the team that you trust, whether it's a doctor or a midwife. You have to pick somebody you trust. Okay, are you guys, so you said breech baby, you guys are trained in that. Are you guys allowed to birth a breech baby though? And multiples? Can
So
you do multiples each?
multiples, you do have to be a CNM
Okay.
in the state of Arizona or be with the OBGYN. Thankfully, I've been able to assist in those. So I've done 3 sets of I love it. Oh, she's 30 weeks. Okay, that's awesome. So she's got time for baby to turn, but I would go ahead and start working on stuff now so that baby doesn't get stuck in that position. What's really important is looking up the breech birth correlation or breech beyond borders because you can birth a breech baby, and that's really important to know that you do not have to have a C-section for it. So it's really important. But if you do want to turn, that's not something that you want to do, or you can't find someone that's going to support you in that. Look up spinning babies. Go to a chiropractor so we can be adjusted, and that will cause space. Don't think you're going to go to the chiropractor one time. If you really have a baby that needs to be turned, it's going to be multiple times of like trying to get those hips aligned and open the hips and release tension in order to get baby turned. But yeah, definitely look up a lot of things, or you could always reach out to us too. I can do breech. I have gone to breech conferences. I've done birth emergency skills training and the breech beyond borders, and love it. I've done 3 or 4 breech births. It does.
Wow.
I mean,
That's,
the reason why it's such a big risk now because it's not taught in the medical schools anymore. So it is a risk for them to do it because you don't know what you're doing.
I mean, they don't even teach them how to catch the baby in anything other than us lying on our back.
So stupid. And that's why a lot of doctors, and that's another thing to keep in mind, that's not the difference between us. You can birth with us any way you want, and keep in mind in the hospital, they're going to tell you, oh, get on the bed and do this. No, you can do whatever you want. You can stand up and have your baby. If you want to do it on all fours, you can do it. And it's illegal for them to touch you and move you. That is an assault, and they can't do that. So you birth your baby how you want to, whether it's hospital or home. But I think that's really important to know as well, the difference.
I have a silly question because it's the one thing that's always scared me the most about birth other than pain. And when I say it, you're going to laugh, but you're also going to remember how much and how nervous I was about it. When we pooped during birth,
I knew that was it.
for you. And for the record, I didn't poop.
I don't
There we go.
remember you pooping. I don't remember you pooping. But I don't remember usually when people do. Like, you'd have to poop a lot for me to remember because most women do. And no, honestly, if I'm not seeing poop, it does worry me that you're not doing it right. I'd rather see the poop. It tells me that you are pushing correctly, your baby is coming down the right way, and it definitely doesn't bother me. And for the most part, we are gonna scoop it out and keep it pushing. But if I don't see poop, I do like in my head, okay, they're not pushing correctly. Let me. It makes me want to do a vaginal exam. I try to sit on my hands. I don't want to touch nobody's vagina if I don't have to. I don't want to touch anything. But it does make me be like, can I do an exam? Like, if you're not pooping, like, what's happening?
And that's the other thing, you don't have to have them continuously check you either. You can tell them you don't want to check.
Yeah, no, they shouldn't be.
Well, there you go. Last night, we watched the videos on how you're supposed to, like, open them into flour and breathe. I was really trying my best. Then I got to the point where I was like, yo, this baby need to come out. Let me rip. Let her rip. They just gonna have to stitch me up because I don't care anymore. This breathing, it was taking way too long. But yeah, I don't know how y'all feel about the poop.
Yeah, no, poop doesn't bother me. If you're not pooping, I'm worried. I'm trying to figure out why.
Again, I didn't poop, y'all, but I did throw up. Baby.
You did. I think if I remember correctly, the first time, the first birth I was at, I think you almost got me, and I was like, oh.
Yep.
So,
Your mom had my water broke, and I
yeah, I remember that.
What a picture. Wish I would have caught that on camera. Okay, so all right, let's get to wrapping up so you don't have to hold this phone anymore. You can actually get on your face. I'm not sure if you were aware, but for Black Maternal Health Week, the theme is Our Bodies Belong to Us, Restoring Black Autonomy and Joy. What does the theme mean to you this year?
What it means to me, this year, I think, okay, I have to go with the first thing that came to mind as far as like, because I read Taking Back Our Bodies on that flyer for the conference. And it is about the first thing I had in my mind was just taking control because all the time that we have not had the options of making, or okay, going back, actually being able to realize what we can and say, yes, say no to. Because I feel like we've always been taught to shut up and be quiet. Um, Not just the doctor, but that many people know it's better for us than what we know of our own. And how many times, like you're saying, like, I need to be quiet about my depression, or you need to be quiet about anything, because as a strong Black woman, I'm not saying I am, but I saw my mom and I saw, so many different women in my family as generational, just being the strong Black woman, and how that's not really healthy. And I think that that has really been promoted when we go back to Gabby Douglas. Um, and other athletes who have just sat back and taken their moment of like, this isn't healthy for me anymore. And so it kind of goes into that, taking back our own bodies, of realizing I do know what's best. You don't know me. You don't know my heritage. You don't know anything about me. I know the right choice. And ultimately, being able to make those choices and realizing that you have the choice. Because I feel like a lot of times we have always been raised to think like we don't have a choice. Someone else has always known what's better for us, or to stay on the right path so nobody sees you, or you don't cause controversy or whatever. So that's really important.
Thank you so much for bringing that up because I do believe that even once you get past the birthing stage and you go into motherhood, you still can't be honest about your trials and tribulations. I know, shameless plug, I do the parent bill every week, but I do that because if you search that hashtag or if you search like parent fails or parent mess ups on any platform, you'll only find white moms.
Mm.
You won't find a Black mom talking
That's
about
right.
things that she
But we know why. But that's because you know how quick. Anytime
how.
I've seen in media, in the news, where the white mom or the Black mom do the same damn thing, and the Black mom doesn't have her kids, but the white mom is still part of the PTO. Like, I, I, I remember this one specific case. They were both like at job interviews or something, or the Black mom was at a job interview and left her son in the car to go in for the job interview, and she like lost her kid, didn't, went to jail. Where the white mom, well, if you look at Casey Anthony, but never mind,
Yeah,
never
we'll see. So I do that to encourage other Black mothers to know that it's okay when we mess up because it should be okay. We shouldn't have to walk in every room
We're not
and tell our
perfect.
kids they must be.
And motherhood is hard. And you just feel like, oh, who gets me in charge? Why am I in charge?
I'm not ready for this. Who's mom? I don't want to be mom.
That's it. And that's it. And how many times, like, let's just be honest, how many times have we, like, been in the car driving by ourselves and thought to ourselves, like, what happens if I just keep driving? Like, what if I accidentally end up in California? Like,
I just all the exes. Just every single one. I don't know how that happened.
lost? I got lost.
I just went and targeted for one thing, and it took me 3 hours to find it. No big deal.
And it was all the things we didn't have at home. And I want to be a good mom, so I have to bought it all.
Yeah, and that's why we love Target so much because it's so clean and it's so open, and it's like you see other moms doing it by themselves, and we know what we're doing.
Oh,
We know why the sale is what it is. It's not because we need these things. It's because we need to turn. We need to pass them on.
why, which is why I'm struggling right now giving up Starbucks. I do go to a therapist, and she was like, oh, I don't. Well, I drank all mine, but I do have some history here. But she did say something like, if you're having like a hard day, what do you do for yourself? Like, what do you do? And I was like, 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 what do you mean? Like, I do like to do things for myself, but I don't necessarily always find the time. She's like, okay, so I want you to start, like going maybe to go get a boba or something. And in my head, I'm like, I'm trying to stop going to Starbucks. If I keep up and I had a rough morning, I feel better if I had Starbucks. I feel better if I go through this. I'm like, oh, it's a rough day. Let me go get Starbucks.
I need to celebrate myself. I need to make myself better. I need to drink and a coffee.
And I'm trying not to buy Starbucks and hear my therapist and go have boba. Boba sounds a lot like Starbucks.
What is your advice to a newly pregnant Black mother and what she should look for and search for her birth team? Because again, we're advocating choice here. We're not necessarily saying you should pick a midwife or a birth center, but we're just letting you know that this is an option.
Yeah, I hate to say this because I'm not, like I said, I'm biracial, so but I think that it's very important to have Black provider or a Black doula. I can't say that I did, but as I've gotten older and as I've become more into the healthcare field, I do make sure of it now that I look out for that first because you can't understand my situation. You can't understand why I eat what I eat. You can't understand why I care or how my family dynamic works if you haven't been through that, or even just my kids. So a lot goes into it, but really ultimately finding someone that's listening and actually answering your questions. Because if you come with questions and they're like, oh, you don't need to worry about that, or they don't give you the pros and the cons, like there's no way. Everything has a pro and con. Everything has a consequence. So you can't say there's no repercussions to that. There's no cons to that. There's always going to be. So when you're asking someone a question, they should be able to give you pros, cons, if, ands, or buts. And if they don't do that, they don't have time to answer your questions. Don't stay. And I think that's one other thing that I want to put out there as well is it's never too late to change providers. Some people will be like, well, I've already been there this whole time, or I already had 2 kids with them. I didn't like my birth. Change providers. Like, no, that's insanity to keep doing the same thing over and over and over. That's ridiculous. You're gonna end up with the same result. Stop doing that to yourself. But if you find someone that's listening to you, find somewhere you're respected, and it's never too late to change. I had a client change while she was in the labor. Crazy. Like, same thing as the first day as client was filling out paperwork, and I was having contractions. I know, and had baby like in a few hours. It's crazy. But it's never too late to change. And then wait, there was one more thing. What'd you say?
Advice to a newly pregnant.
Oh, a newly pregnant mom. That's what I was gonna say. Stop overthinking the big things. There's so many things that like I feel like first time moms struggle with, and it there's I can't explain it. There's so many things as a mom that you have to make choices for. If your child is fed and your child has a clean clothes and there's not much to worry about after that. You're a good mom just for even worrying about it. So like first time moms they worry about so much and it's just like that's not a big deal. That's not a big deal. It's gonna all work out.
So true.
Get a doula or postpartum doula.
Oh, that's clutch. I didn't have a postpartum doula, but I definitely recommend that. Get a doula, then get a postpartum doula. I feel like that would be amazing. Somebody that's there to make the meals or even just take care of you, even for 4 hours a day. I just feel like that's
somebody care for you. Somebody, yeah, because the husband's job. I mean, if he gets paternity, if he gets some time off, if he gets paternity leave, then his job is taking care of those other kids. But somebody has to be making sure that you have the food in the house that you need, the water coming to you, that you're not getting postpartum depression because he's so busy focused on the other kids that he's not looking at you. Yeah. If you've had multiple children, postpartum doula is what you should focus on, definitely.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. Didn't follow my own advice. But that's what I recommend.
I didn't follow it either. I never did either, but you people should do it. Don't struggle like us. Don't be on the struggle bus like us.
Don't be on the struggle bus.
We did it, so you don't have to do it.
That's what I be saying. I'm doing it so you don't have to. I'm just follow my lead. No, not my lead. Do what I say, not listen. That's what I want you to do. Like, it was so awesome talking to you, Micah. I really appreciate it. And we might have to do this again and go into other stuff because there's a lot in touch. We can even do a YouTube live, which I heard is fun. Never done it. But
okay, we're gonna keep keep in touch and do something like that. We'll just do a motherhood series.
Idea.
All right, I love you guys.
Bye, guys. Thank y'all.
Thank you guys for watching my conversation with a midwife. If you guys enjoyed that, let me know, because I will then add my conversations with a doula and my conversation with a fellow Black birther. Thanks for sticking around, guys. Talk soon.